Hello everyone and welcome back to Double Play Baseball. In this video, Ryan and I are going to break down the Mariners offseason as well as preview their 2023 campaign. Ryan, we're doing this series for the AL West all week, but let's start it off with the Mariners. Do you want to walk us through some of their offseason moves?
Yeah, it was a relatively busy one for the Mariners. Let's start off what they added / kept. I guess they didn't really keep much. They added Teoscar Hernandez, AJ Pollock, two big outfield pieces for them, as well as Colton Wong. And then that brings us to what they lost. Not much either. It's kind of what they lost, or what they gained is where they lost the things. They lost Mitch Haniger, Adam Frazier, Carlos Santana, who they didn't have for long, and then prospects Eric Swanson and Adam Macko in the, I believe that was the Teoscar Hernandez trade.
Yep.
So lose a few key guys that were starters for you last year, but add a few guys at that same position. Jack, which one do you like the most or not like the most in terms of what they lost?
I'm not sure which one I like the most. The one I think is the most important is probably, it's got to be Teoscar Hernandez. I know that he's going to replace Mitch Haniger, who we both like the Mitch Haniger signing for the Giants. But for Hernandez, I had him as the 8th best right fielder in baseball, and I thought they got him at a pretty good deal because the Blue Jays needed to move on from some of their right-handed hitters. I thought Teoscar Hernandez was a good pickup for the Mariners. At a 131 WRC plus and an 840 OPS over the last 2 seasons, and I think he just slots in perfectly as a pair with Julio Rodriguez in the outfield. You mentioned AJ Pollock, you mentioned Colton Wong. I like some of the moves they made, but I think you have to go with Teoscar Hernandez as the most important addition, at least. And I think it also just signals that the Mariners are willing to add position players, which is something that they haven't been doing a lot recently, going out and getting different position players. They've grown some themselves, but this was a big move, I think, for the baseball-wise and also just mentality-wise.
For me, I ended up going with Colton Wong to sort of be different, but I think it's a little bit more important in terms of what the Mariners are going to put on the field. I think he's not as good as Teoscar Hernandez, the one you took, but I think he's a bigger improvement from Adam Frazier than Teoscar Hernandez is from Mitch Haniger. And maybe you can say Teoscar Hernandez was more important because you lost Haniger and then you kind of had to replace him with a very quality player like Teoscar Hernandez to make sure you didn't get worse. But I think Colton Wong was a bigger upgrade from that perspective. And as much as I don't like the guy, he's top 10 second baseman in my rankings. I believe I had him at 10 when I did those. So little plug, make sure you check out all those positional rankings on our channel. But I think Colton Wong is probably the biggest upgrade they had at any position this offseason. And I think that's my most important addition for them to kind of get better at second base.
Yeah, I think second base is the main position that they fully upgraded from. I'd say the jump from Frazier to Wong is bigger than the jump will be probably this season from Haniger to Teoscar Hernandez. I think Wong's a good piece. I don't like him much either. Of course, he played well against the Giants. He can kind of be an a-hole sometimes on the field, but good defender, has hit above average at times in his career. I think he fits in really well in this Mariners lineup, and I'm starting to like the way that this Mariners squad is shaping out. I think no one really had any questions about the rotation going into the offseason. Adding Castillo at the deadline was their real big move that almost feels like you can lump him into this offseason as well, but the lineup I think is shaping up to be pretty good. You have Julio Rodriguez. We already mentioned Teoscar Hernandez. You had Ty France from last year. J.P. Crawford is probably right around average at the shortstop, but has shown flashes to be even better. And they've got just a handful of other great hitters. When you mentioned A.J. Pollock could be a good platoon guy, maybe play DH. Now you add Colton Wong. Eugenio Suarez hits nukes. Cal Raleigh, who I kind of feel like you go in at every position now. There's something to like for the Mariners.
Now, looking at this offseason from kind of a total point of view, what would you give them as a grade?
I went with a B+. They didn't lose a whole lot other than Mitch Haniger, which was the big piece in that. And I think they did make some meaningful upgrades with Hernandez and Wong. It's not an A+ kind of an offseason because I don't think they went out and got one of the premier pieces in the offseason. And losing Mitch Haniger, who had kind of been a spark plug for them, I knocked him down a bit, but I went with B+. I think that's fair.
Yeah, and I went with a B+ as well, and we keep these secret from each other, so there's no collusion going on here. We both agree that they're kind of a B+. Like I kind of mentioned a little bit, they upgraded at positions they needed to in terms of right field and second base in those positions that they lost from last year, and they're trusting the young guys in the rotation along with Castillo and Ray. And did you know, I looked today, Ray is actually projected to be their 3-starter behind Castillo and Gilbert, so Ray was your big signing last season. Now he's as your 3. So they're trusting those guys, and I kind of like what they did. They didn't need to address pitching at all, so they add a few pieces, upgrades to their lineup. So I'm going to go with the B+.
And I mean, there's a world where Robbie Ray is your 4-starter. If George Kirby breaks out like some are expecting him to, then you might have Robbie Ray in the 4 spot. I think they might have him listed as the 3 because that way you can go right, and then a lefty. But either way, I think to get into my bold prediction, actually, because it's a good segue, I think the Mariners are going to have one of the best performing starting rotations in baseball. And if I kind of had to make it a little bit more specific, I could see them having 4 or maybe all 5 starters with ERAs under 4.0 at least. You have Robbie Ray, who we mentioned, Luis Castillo, who was a stud after going over to Seattle last year. George Kirby's a popular breakout pick. Logan Gilbert was under that number last year. And then you fill in that 5 spot. You have Chris Flexen, who was under a 4 ERA last year. Matt Brash, who has the stuff to potentially do it if they want him to be a starter. And Marco Gonzalez, who had a surprisingly productive year last year. So a lot of those guys were flirting around 3.5 to slightly over 4 ERA. And I wouldn't be surprised if they run out of starting rotation where everyone's at least under 4 and some of them are pushing under 3 as well.
Yeah, so we'll keep it there with my prediction. I guess my prediction is sort of what to expect, so I'll lump those together. So I kind of sort of a prediction, but I'm going with the first wild card position for them this upcoming season. I think they're not going to win the division. I think we both agree that that's still the Astros division. But the first wild card, the first team there, and with that, I'm going to go with Julio Rodriguez as a top 3 in MVP voting, which may not sound like bold, like just spitting that out for you, but this is like a 3-guy MVP race between Trout, Ohtani, and Judge. So top 3 in MVP is very impressive, and I think Julio Rodriguez could do that this year.
Well, I mean, that's assuming a guy like Jose Ramirez doesn't go off and win his first MVP. Rafael Devers, who can be in that conversation. There's a ton of great players in the American League. So I definitely like that. I think it's going to be a popular prediction because we both kind of agree that Julio Rodriguez is probably going to win one, if not multiple, MVPs over his career. Second year would be very big. Playoffs, as you mentioned, I think for sure. I think that's what I'm going with my what to expect is last season where Mariners fans were teetering on, are we going to make the playoffs, are we not? I think Mariners fans should expect to be back in the postseason this year, whether it's in that first wildcard spot or at least bare minimum going to be in that last wildcard spot. I think Mariners fans can and should probably be pretty confident that the M's are going back to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think that's a solid bet for sure, and I think the Mariners are a team that, like you said, they should expect to be here. And with the Astros' success, I don't know if they're going to get the division anytime soon, but they're going to at least be a wild card team consistently for the next handful of years, and maybe someday if they keep developing their talent like they have been, like they're showing signs to, maybe they'll be able to overtake the Astros and compete with them. I think they could compete with them in this upcoming years, but we'll see. We don't think they can take it from them, but they're going to be a playoff team. They're dangerous in a playoff series with that rotation, like we talked about.
Well, I'll ask you this question to kind of wrap it up. We're talking about the rotation. You have Castillo, Gilbert, Ray, Brash, Kirby, Flexen, Gonzalez. That's 7 guys. They're going to find a 5. How many teams rotations are you going to take over the Mariners, and does that include the Astros?
I think it does include the Astros is what I'm going to go with. Maybe you're more deep with the Mariners, but in terms of, I mean, you're not throwing 7-8 guys in your rotation throughout a season. So I think what the Astros have, I mean, you go Javier, McCullers, let's see, off the top of my head, you're going to have Hunter Brown come up. You get,
You're missing a lefty.
I know, I've got the mind block of what is his name. I can picture exactly what it would like. You go Urquidy,
2 starts in the World Series.
I know. I can literally picture his face right now. He was on my fantasy team for some time, I believe. No, he wasn't.
No, he was on mine. It's from Valdez.
MLB The Show team. That's what it was. Valdez. Yes, but yeah. So I mean, you take those 5 guys with 6 with Hunter Brown potentially coming up. That's a solid one, and there's a handful of rotations that are top heavy, but the Mariners are among the deeper rotations in all of baseball. So a couple injuries, they can sustain it, whereas maybe some other teams, I mean, you look at the Mets who have maybe the best 1-2 punch in the game, injuries, and they're kind of screwed a little bit. So Mariners have a very deep and solid rotation that I like compared to a lot of teams in baseball.
Yeah, the Astros one, it's close for me because I would say that the top of the Mariners rotation also competes at least with the top 2 I expect for the Astros, which I think are Javier and Framber Valdez going into this year. We've seen Robbie Ray have a year that's better than the years Framber Valdez has put up. Luis Castillo, I think, can and maybe will match any production Christian Javier has. So they've got some top-heavy dudes. It's not like they don't have any Cy Young contenders on their own team. Of course, you are banking on some of the younger guys either continuing production like Logan Gilbert or George Kirby sparking it up and breaking out in 2022. But I think baseline, I'd say that they probably have a top 3 rotation in the American League. I think right now I'd probably look at the Yankees as the best in baseball, and then you have the Astros and the Mariners. I'm not sure if I'm forgetting anyone uber specific in the American League, but at this point, I'd probably throw the Mariners in there at least in the top 3, and you can figure out whatever order you want.
Yeah, they're definitely going to be a great rotation and a great team in all this season. So if Mariners fan, let us know what you think is coming for the 2023 season. If you think they could make a run at the division, or if you think they're stuck in the wild card spot, any bold predictions like a Julio potential MVP, let us know down below, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. It would help us out, and we'd really appreciate it. We've got every team in baseball. We've already done the NL West. This is the first one of the AL West coming out. So make sure you stick along to see some more teams, maybe your favorite team, your favorite players. Make sure you subscribe and follow along. That's all we got.